Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So today's video is all about luxury lessons. I have been buying luxury for many years now, and over those years I have definitely made my fair share of mistakes, and I still make buying mistakes today, but every year I hope I get a little bit better, and I certainly try to avoid those mistakes that I've made in the past. So I thought I would share some of my general tips, some of the things I've learned over the years. I hope you guys enjoy this, and let's get started. Before getting stuck in, I did want to let you know that 24/7 have gone live with a new spring offer, and it's a really good one. So you can get 20% off your purchase over 500, and that's £500, dollars or euros, and there are so many gorgeous items included. This is the widest selection I think I've ever seen for them. I think there's over 80 pages, which is crazy. There's a ton of new season items. There are bags included. I saw Valentino, Marc Jacobs, a lot of beautiful Burberry styles as well. They have Theory included this time as well, Anine Bing, just so many beautiful styles. So I will go ahead and link all the details below along with the discount code. There is a whole landing page where you can see literally everything included, but I do also have a blog post as well if you wanted to see my pick of items. So I will include all the details in the description section if you did want to check that out. My first tip is to look at the pre-loved market, and this is true even if you have no intention of buying pre-loved. Even if you're dead set on buying new, I always think it's worthwhile to look at some pre-loved bags just to get an idea of wear and tear, because if there are any consistent issues, you are more likely to be able to spot them on the pre-loved market rather than just handling something new or a display model in store. And it's such a worthwhile thing to do, especially if you're spending a lot of money. You know, if I'm spending £2,000 or £3,000, sometimes even more, the last thing I want to do is have a bag that's going to look tired after only a few uses or after only a few years. So have a quick look at some pre-loved sites, a few different pre-loved bags, and often you will be able to spot a pattern. Maybe there might be a structural issue, maybe the leather dents easily, the hardware scratches easily. But have a look at the photos and see if you can identify any patterns, and then ask yourself if you're okay with that kind of wear and tear. Obviously, people do use their bags in different ways, but it is a really useful indicator to see if there might be any issues that you might encounter with the bag that you're looking at. I definitely did that with my Louis Vuitton Capucine bag, and it was a big factor in deciding that I did actually want to go pre-loved. I looked at so many different styles, and this is a very, very expensive bag, and consistently I saw a ton of wear and tear in the styles I looked at, but I still really liked the bag. So I ended up going down the pre-loved route for it. I got a really good deal on it. And the bag that I got wasn't perfect by any means, but I was okay with the condition, especially for the price. I've been so happy with it. But had I paid £5,000 or however much it is now and seen that same kind of wear and tear in just a short space of time, I'm not sure I would have been as happy with it. So definitely worthwhile to consider. Again, even if you want to buy new, it's always worthwhile knowing what you're getting into, and looking at some pre-loved bags is a great way to do that. My second tip is to look closely at the interior and how a bag is organized. And I feel like previously I would have almost kind of dismissed the interior of a bag as just secondary to my primary concerns, which are, does it look cute and is it comfortable to wear? But actually the dividers and the general organization of a bag can have a huge impact in terms of how much I enjoy it and how much I ultimately wear a bag. And over the years, I have definitely learned that my preference is a big, wide open space. I've had so many bags where they've had a lot of dividers in the middle, and it really does limit the capacity and limit how I use the bag. And some people might absolutely love dividers, and that's something that you have to get to know your own preferences about. But for me, I'm just not a divider girl. You know, if I want extra organization, I will happily use a bag organizer, but I don't want that rigid organization in the middle already set for me. So that is definitely something I look at now. If there are a lot of really stiff dividers, if it's kind of difficult to get my items in and out of, I do think twice, just because I know that my most frequently used bags are the ones that I find incredibly easy to use, and generally speaking, those are the ones without lots of clunky structured dividers. The next thing that I have learned, and maybe this is an incredibly obvious point, but something I realized only fairly recently, but where you live should absolutely dictate what you buy. And, you know, for all the jokes about UK weather, it is pretty mild where we live, or at least where I live. You know, I live in the middle of the UK, and even though it gets warm in summer and cold in winter, it never gets that warm for that length of time. It doesn't really get very humid here. Similarly, in winter, you know, it does get cold, you do need coats, but we aren't covered in snow for months on end. So generally speaking, even though we have seasonal weather, it isn't too extreme in terms of temperatures or the general weather. And so I don't really have to think that much about the bags that I use. You know, obviously I'll avoid suede or really delicate lambskin if it's raining. I probably won't get anything too delicate out if it's really, really hot and sticky. But again, it doesn't happen that often. And I took a whole bunch of bags to Miami, Mexico with me when we went last year, and I completely regretted the bags that I took. You know, I took my white Chanel bag, I took my Chanel pink wallet on chain, and a couple of other styles. I spent a lot of time being concerned about my bags because it was so humid. I felt like my hands were much stickier than normal, and there were just more things to be concerned about in general because the weather was a lot more extreme than I was used to. And so for me, you know, if I know that I'm living in a slightly more extreme climate, whether that is very humid a lot of the year or particularly rainy with a lot of snow, anything like that, then that would absolutely play into my purchasing decisions. Similarly, traveling to these places as well, I've really learned not to take overly expensive bags that I'm going to spend my holiday stressing over. You know, I still absolutely want to bring and use and enjoy my luxury bags because, you know, otherwise what's the point of having them? But I've definitely learned to leave my really expensive, most treasured and maybe even most delicate bags at home, especially if I'm going somewhere where it's particularly warm or a bit more extreme than the weather that I'm used to, just so I have that peace of mind and I'm not constantly stressing about it. My next lesson learned is that the cost of an item really does impact my enjoyment of it. And this is particularly pertinent because I love Chanel, and as many people know, Chanel price increases are another level of insanity. And so I am now kind of faced with a situation where bags that I bought for, you know, maybe £2,000 10 years ago are now worth £10,000, which is a completely insane thing. But I definitely carry a bag that's worth £2,000 a lot differently than I carry a bag that's worth £10,000. And quite simply, I just prefer to wear bags that are a bit less expensive because I don't have to stress as much about what happens if something happens to it, if there's damage, if it gets stolen, like all those things come into it when you're wearing something that expensive. And I just don't enjoy it as much. So even though I absolutely still wear and enjoy my Chanel bags, I certainly don't wear and enjoy them in the same way anymore. And especially now with Leo, I do tend to gravitate towards my other bags more on a daily basis, just so I don't have that added level of burden and worry. So maybe this will be different for different people. Certainly if I was a billionaire, I probably wouldn't have these concerns, but I'm not, and it is something I think about. So I still absolutely plan to enjoy and use them, but it is definitely a bit less. And now that I know how much a bag costs really impacts my enjoyment, I do think about the whole picture when deciding on my luxury purchases, especially at the higher end of the pricing scale. My next lesson learned is that a bag must be fit for purpose in order for me to actually really enjoy using it. And again, this may seem obvious, but for so many years, I really only looked at how a bag looked, how easy it was to style, and how comfortable it was to wear. I mentioned earlier my dividers point, and this is kind of similar, but there are so many things that can go wrong, I feel, with the design of a bag, from not standing upright. So I did have a little Gucci bag, which is adorable. You could carry it by the top handle or by the longer strap, but it would not stay upright. So anytime I popped it on a table, it would topple over. It annoyed me so much. Similarly, I got rid of my Fendi Peekaboo ICU mini or petite bag recently because even though I loved it, it wasn't easy to get my phone in and out of. It was just a smidge too small. And I always feel like when it comes to these kind of design decisions, they're so easily rectified, you know? Just make the bag a little bit bigger, just make it a bit more stable. And it seems like it's such an obvious point. And often when I'm looking at a bag, if I really love the look of it, I'll kind of make excuses for it. But I've really learned that it's just not the one to do, because as soon as I start using the bag, I'm bound to get annoyed. And I'm always gonna go for a bag that is functional and fit for purpose over a bag which has all those little design niggles. So for me, if there's something that annoys me from the get-go, I really learned not to look past it because there are just too many other bags which don't have those issues. And ultimately, it's so much less likely that I will reach for that bag, especially because I do have other options available which are probably more functional and just easier to carry and wear in general. linking in with that point is accessibility, because how easy it is to access your items is such an underrated, undervalued element of a bag. And those bags of mine, which are really easy to access, they have nice wide openings, they're just so easy to use, are often the ones that I grab most. And those that are a little bit finicky, a little bit fiddly, sometimes I might even scratch my hand getting in and out of, usually they don't get as much wear. And my go-to example here is the Louis Vuitton pochette, and I did a video on this bag after getting it and having it only a few months because I knew pretty much instantly it wasn't going to work for me. And a few people called me out in the comments saying, well, you bought a mini bag, obviously it's not going to fit much, which was completely fair. But my issue, apart from the lack of capacity, because it was very, very small, was also just how narrow it was and how difficult it was to access your items. And this is what I found out in the kind of real world scenario, which was you don't have a lot of time to pack your items when you're out and about. You know, maybe you're at a till point and you have people queuing behind you, you know, you're being handed your card or your cash and a receipt, and really you want to pack your things in quickly and get out of there as quickly as possible so you don't hold up the queue. What you don't have time for is to stack all your items in the very specific way that you might need to in order to fit everything you need to inside. So I ended up carrying my sunglasses, carrying my phone, and sometimes even carrying my little card holder because I couldn't fit all those things in and easily close my bag, which is really not what you want. So I definitely try and pay attention to how easy items are to stack, how accessible they are, how wide the opening is, all those accessibility points which may not sound all that sexy and exciting, but actually they really do lead to a more comfortable bag experience, and that absolutely dictates the bags which I use on a daily basis. How functional are they actually to use in real life scenarios? And those are the bags I reach for time and time again. And my very last lesson learned is that if you buy well, you buy once. And this doesn't always work, but I think that it can work a lot of the time. And you know, I'm a firm believer that if there's a bag that you really want, you should save up and get the bag that you want. It's a bit easier to say rather than do now with the crazy price increases. And I know the Chanel Classic Flap is always such a popular one that so many people really lust after and save for. And obviously that's made so much harder by their insane price increases. And I feel like whether any bag is worth £10,000 or not is a whole nother video, but in general, I would say that if there is something you have your heart set on, then usually speaking, other models don't generally tend to kind of scratch that itch. There are, however, a few examples, and for me, a kind of tweed boucle bag is my example of that, and that I wanted a Chanel tweed bag for years and years, and then I waited and the prices just kept going up. I didn't want to spend that much on a fabric bag, and then the prices just kept going up and up and up, and it just got to the point where I was like, well, I can't possibly spend that much money on a fabric bag. It was just too much money. So I kind of missed my window. I tried a bunch of other styles. I got a Saint Laurent boucle bag, which I did love, and I was hoping that would scratch the itch, but it didn't quite do it for me. And then I got my Chanel 19 bag, which is right there. I think you can see it there, which kind of has done that for me. You know, it's not quite the same as a Classic Flap. It is obviously by Chanel still, but it has that same look. It has that tweed look I wanted. It is by Chanel, but I got it for a fraction of the cost I would have had to pay for a Chanel Classic Flap, which now all the ones I see generally go for £5,000–6,000. That one I got for about £3,000, so by no means was it bargain of the year, but I do think I got it for a really good price, and it has definitely scratched that itch for me. So I do think that there are some situations where you can go for a cheap model and still get that same satisfaction, but generally speaking, I would say that if there was a style that you had your heart set on, regardless of the price point and what brand it is, I would usually say try and go for that one rather than settling for other models, because whilst it can work out sometimes, more often than not for me, I've still ended up wanting that initial item, and it just cost me more money in the long run because I had to buy the lesser item, and I've still ended up spending more money on the original item that I wanted. So that wraps up this video, guys. I hope that you enjoyed it. Let me know if you have any luxury lessons learned in the comment section below. I would love to read about them. I'm sure other people would as well. If you enjoyed the video, please do give it a thumbs up, and as always, thank you so much for watching. I will see you in my next one. Bye, guys.